Well, it's a fact. It's already happened. The first explosion has already taken place. The combat group deployed by the United States in Caribbean waters has already seen action. It happened when it attacked a speedboat with 11 people on board that, according to the US government, was loaded with a large quantity of drugs. This is a common modus operandi among drug traffickers, using speedboats with 3 or 4 outboard motors to transport the white powder north at full speed from South America. Although honestly, I don't know if there was really that much because, let's face it, with 11 people on board, there wasn't much room left. 11 people, that's some crew for a speedboat. Whatever the case, the important thing is that according to Washington, this boat belonged to the Tren de Aragua cartel and was destroyed by a missile fired by the force deployed by Donald Trump. The president himself broke the news of the operation. It was his calling card, and he promised that there will be more.
Please let this serve as notice to anybody even thinking about bringing drugs into the United States of America. Beware. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
And you'll see, and there's more where that came from. We have a lot of drugs pouring into our country, coming in for a long time. And these came out of Venezuela and coming out very heavily from Venezuela. A lot of things are coming out of Venezuela.
That said, his calling card. This is the first time the United States has acknowledged a military attack against Latin American cartels since Trump authorized the Pentagon to use force against them earlier this year, although in this case, the issue has been somewhat watered down. Why do I say that? Because attacking a speedboat may be shocking, but it happened at the same time that Xi Jinping was basking in the adulation of more than 26 foreign leaders in the midst of a massive military parade.
China flaunts military might with lavish parade and sends warning to Washington.
In recent days, we've seen not only an increasing rapprochement between Russia and China, but above all, between India, Russia, and China. And that VisualPolitik community is much more disturbing. Recently, on our sister channel about economy, Visual Economic, we told you how and why he has launched an open war against Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Trump has punished him with tariffs and various threats under the pretext, which I can tell you in advance is completely false, that India is buying oil from Russia. What happened was that an emboldened Trump preferred to maximize his objectives to bring the Indians to their knees. The problem? Well, even though New Delhi is willing to negotiate trade terms, Modi has already said that there will be no bowing down. So what did he do? He went to Beijing to exchange warm embraces with Putin and Xi Jinping in what may just illustrate one of the biggest blunders in US foreign policy in decades. On top of all this, Trump has been missing in action, embroiled in his wars and political obsessions in the United States, such as attacking the state of Colorado for not voting for him, and announcing the destruction of a boat. Of course, when you look at it that way, things look different. But let's not get sidetracked. We'll talk about all that another day, so don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. But, getting back to Venezuela, this latest action by the United States of America also gives us a few clues, because the truth is that Trump said more between the lines. So what exactly does this attack mean? Could it be the precursor to even greater action? Was it the opening shot in a campaign against the Chavista guerrillas? Well, that's exactly what we're going to look at next. Stay tuned. But first, let me ask you this. Have you noticed how everyone's suddenly talking about making money with AI? It's simpler than you think. No years of experience, no expensive degree. With AI, you could start earning in just weeks. Whether that's landing a high-paying job or launching something of your own, AI skills aren't optional anymore. People who have them are 130% more likely to land opportunities. Now, here's the exciting part. This weekend, you can join the 2-day AI Mastermind workshop by Outskill, the world's first AI-focused education platform. In just 16 hours of live, expert-led training, learners have already built over 100 AI products with zero coding, many pulling in $3 to $4K in revenue. Normally, this program costs $895, but we've partnered with Outskill to give away 1,000 free seats exclusively to our viewers, only for the next 72 hours. That's nearly $900,000 worth of training, totally free. And by the way, it's rated 4.9 out of 5 on Trustpilot. Why does this workshop stand out? Short and effective. Just 16 hours. Great for busy schedules. Lifetime access to Outskill's exclusive AI community. 5,000 plus members. A seamless AI learning dashboard. Already trusted by 10 million plus learners worldwide. Over the 2 days, you'll dive into prompt engineering, 10 plus powerful AI tools, automating your workflow workflows and building AI products without code. Also, if you sign up now, you get exclusive bonuses worth $5,100, a prompt bible with 3,000 plus high-impact prompts on day 1, a roadmap to monetize AI on day 2, a personalized AI toolkit builder only if you attend both days. So, clear your weekend, Saturday and Sunday, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Seats are limited and filling up fast. Grab yours through the link in the description. P.S. Join the WhatsApp group to stay updated before the big launch. And now, back to our topic. Okay, I'm sure you've all heard about the drug boat that was blown up by a missile strike. This happened using the massive combat group that has been deployed in these waters. Remember that we're talking about an immediate deployment amphibious group, consisting of the amphibious assault ship USS Iwo Jima, the transport ship USS San Antonio, and the landing ship USS Fort Lauderdale. And alongside them, 3 Arleigh Burke-class missile destroyers, armed with Aegis combat systems, and more than 90 Tomahawk missiles. Then we also have the guided missile cruiser USS Lake Erie and 2 nuclear submarines. In total, this is a combat force with some 8,000 troops involved, which would be capable of destroying numerous targets on land and then launching rapid operations with marines and helicopters. Of course, that doesn't mean that this is what will happen. In any case, you already know all this. But perhaps what many of you have not stopped to investigate are the details, and above all, the implications of this operation. Well, here are the 3 key points of everything that is happening in the Caribbean waters and what this first strike could mean. The Trump administration designated the Tren de Aragua gang as a foreign terrorist organization back in February, the first Venezuelan criminal organization to be designated as such. Of course, that wasn't all. In July, the Treasury Department also sanctioned the so-called Cartel of the Suns, a network of military officers that US officials accuse Maduro of leading as a specially designated global terrorist entity, citing its role in narcotics trafficking and support for Tren de Aragua and the Sinaloa cartel. So what does this mean? Well, it means that Trump is completely serious when he says he wants these cartels to start suffering the consequences of their operations like never before. And let's see, the deployment of such a large force and its commencement of operations is a clear reflection of this. Above all, it's the way in which they've decided to make their debut. You see, it's nothing new for the United States to carry out operations against drug boats or ships suspected of carrying narcotics, but until now, everything worked differently. In general, the procedure was as follows. After identifying a vessel carrying drugs, the Coast Guard would attempt to get the crew to stop and surrender. And if the boat fled, they would shoot at the engines from a helicopter with a .50 caliber rifle, destroy the engines, disable them, and then board the vessel. In other words, the idea was always to detain, identify, and prosecute those involved.
Everything is done to preserve life. What we don't do is just shoot up boats like Netflix likes to pretend. We can shoot in self-defense, but we rarely do that because most narcos just give up.
What's more, in the 1990s, the United States began sharing information about civilian flights suspected of transporting drugs with the governments of Peru and Colombia. For instance, they passed on intercepted communications or radar data. However, when these governments began to use this information to shoot down planes, Bill Clinton put a stop to this assistance in 1994. Among other things, this was because the government's legal services said that senior officials in the US government could be prosecuted if they shared information, knowing that it could facilitate summary executions. Although Congress later amended the law to allow such assistance. In any case, it seems clear that none of that matters anymore. Now it's the United States that is attacking, considering these groups to be terrorists and a threat to national security. Even with this consideration, there are doubts about the legality of these actions, about summarily executing non-uniformed people from countries with which they are not at war, without trial, without evidence, without control. Of course, Trump doesn't seem to care much about this, especially since last summer the Supreme Court practically gave any president virtual immunity to do as he pleases within the scope of his powers. According to the Supreme Court, the responsibility is political and not criminal. In other words, it depends on Congress. That's something we'll talk about another day. Be that as it may, the point is that we're facing a radical change in approach. In fact, Pentagon sources are being very clear. There will be more attacks like this in the coming days. Arrest and identification are no longer a priority. If you traffic drugs in these waters, you are a target to be eliminated, which is basically what Marco Rubio has also said.
The president is very clear that he's going to use the full power of America, the whole might of the United States, to take on and eradicate these drug cartels.
An approach that many of you will probably like. A tough stance against drug traffickers, but that will terrify others insofar as it means that a government will be carrying out summary executions. Be that as it may, it will have consequences. It's now almost certain that drug traffickers will seek to quickly change their routes, giving priority to those that pass through Ecuador and Mexico. The outcome? It's likely that the drug crisis in these countries will escalate in the coming months. Of course, this is not in itself the most significant thing. In fact, operations have been carried out before. No, the most important thing of all is what this may mean for Venezuela. Pay attention to these words from Donald Trump.
We don't have politically correct anymore. We have tough guys, tough people, including some tough women. But we have tough people. I think it was Trinidad, Venezuela, and they weren't nice to this group of people.
TDA is a designated foreign terrorist organization operating under the control of Nicolas Maduro, responsible for mass murder, drug trafficking, sex trafficking, and acts of violence and terror across the United States and Western Hemisphere.
This is something that the US government has been insisting on heavily in recent weeks. Look no further than the White House spokesperson, who has been very clear.
The Maduro regime is not the legitimate government of Venezuela. It is a narco-terror cartel. Maduro is not a legitimate president. He is a fugitive head of this drug cartel. He has been indicted in the United States for trafficking drugs into our country.
And what is there to support these accusations? Essentially, in March 2020, federal prosecutors in Manhattan launched a case and accused the Maduro government of effectively turning Venezuela into a narco state. According to US prosecutors, Maduro and some of his top aides, including Hugo Carvajal, his military intelligence chief at the time, declared themselves guilty in June, along with Diosdado Cabello as being the leaders of the cartels of the Suns, an increasingly important drug organization. And what do Trump and Rubio say after confirming the attack? That this boat came from Venezuela. They insist on this. And what does that mean? Well, if they had to mount an operation against Maduro, the case would already be closed. It would go something like this. We are monitoring and tracking them. These guys from Caracas are sending us a lot of drugs. You've all seen it. That's not a government. That's not a state. That's a drug factory. And that would probably be enough to make the operation very popular. Let's just say the backstory and the argument are already written. It's no coincidence that they insisted on Maduro and Venezuela when attacking this boat. Of course, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Just because the talking points are already written doesn't mean they'll be used. That's right, a minor target that has passed without pain or glory. The US press is barely giving it any importance. It stands to reason. We're only talking about one boat, and at the moment, Washington doesn't seem convinced to go any further. Why? Because for many in Trump's circle, these dramatic moves reinforce the president's image as a tough guy who stands up to the bad guys, which is basically the image he wants to sell. It's also possible that this will slow down deliveries in the coming months and improve the statistics. Because obviously, drug traffickers will now be more cautious, and besides, changing route takes time. And then that would be enough of an achievement for a White House that probably hates Maduro but doesn't want unnecessary conflicts. They attacked Iran because Israel dragged them into it. And here they have a government that takes in immigrants and sells them oil. For instance, in February, flights with deported immigrants bound for Venezuela resumed, and since then, almost 8,000 people have been deported, a number that could grow in the coming months, because naturally the Bolivarian guerrillas are not going to give Washington any trouble. And then, as you know, Trump himself has renewed Chevron's licenses to exploit oil in Venezuela, and that for now could be enough for the president. In fact, do you know what? Look at what the US Deputy Secretary of State said in a conversation with Donald Trump Jr.
I think in the coming days and weeks we will see more actions that will send messages, but ultimately the Venezuelan people have to rise up and claim their own freedom. We cannot go around the world changing governments at will.
So, let's all relax. Until we see a larger scale attack, we cannot say that we're looking at an escalation. Yes, insisting that Venezuela is the source sets the stage for the plot, but that is only the first step. Until we see more significant action, I'm sorry to say this doesn't mean much. We would love to tell you something different, but for now we can't. The good news, this attack puts Venezuela squarely on the White House's agenda and gives them a casus belli, a justification for war. The bad news, if everything remains at the level of gestures like these, and these are enough to fulfill Trump's objectives, then we can forget about any larger scale action. Of course, the shooting of this drug boat also raises a moral dilemma. Is it acceptable to shoot to kill without first attempting to stop the boat, without due process, and without knowing for sure who and what is on those boats? This VisualPolitik community is a very difficult question to answer. That's why I think it's best to open up the debate and let you tell us your thoughts in the comments. But first, if you liked this video, don't forget to like it and subscribe to VisualPolitik, which helps us out a lot and is totally free for you. As always, thank you very much for being there. All the best. I'll see you soon.